Okay, welcome everybody. We're now starting the November 2nd meeting of the Conservation Commission at 7:15. And I move to open the meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote by announcing your name and I. Michael Lesser, aye.
Carol McCurry, aye.
Kurt Stiegel, aye.
Jacob Strauss, aye.
Courtney Eck, aye.
Okay. Is there anything we need to add to the meeting based on the 48-hour rule? Okay, I don't have anything. Hearing none. Let's move on. Before our 7:20 hearing, we have some site issues, and we'll start with one site issue. Would you like to present that, Joyce?
Sure. We have a request to extend an ORAD for 0 Meadowbrook Road and 0 Coolidge Street. This is the property that's adjacent to the one we did at was it 108 Coolidge?
Yeah.
It's a larger property, and they have done a delineation was done back in 2018. It has since it's due to expire this month, so they're looking to get a 2-year extension. During that period they'll be able to complete their design. They have refreshed and reflagged the wetland delineation, and in many cases moving the flags up gradient from the wetlands. So we are walking that on Monday, but tonight we would like to accept the extension and then approve the plan with this extension at the next meeting.
So, yeah, since we're getting it reflagged and since it's been reflagged and we're going to re-inspect it all, it's like getting it done again. So we're willing to, I'm willing to say that we would just do the extension, but subject to the review of a new set of flags, So I move. I don't know if any has issues. We could do it on discussion. I move to.
Whoa. We can't vote on something that came up on a discussion item. Like we need to amend the agenda if we need to vote on something.
Okay. I can go either way personally. If you feel that way, then given the pending okay, then I'll step back and say, given the pending expiration of it and the fact that we were unable to get out into the field earlier to deal with this, I would like to move to amend the agenda to include the extension of the ORAD for
DEP file number 238397.
Thank you. That's my motion.
I would second that.
Okay.
When can I ask a question or two?
Sure.
When does the current ORAD expire? Does it expire before our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the reason for wanting to do something now rather than wait until after you walk.
So yes, that's true.
Joyce,
Other?
what address was this? Which property this is?
It's 0 Coolidge, 0 Meadowbrook Road.
Okay,
The 2 large projects for Coolidge there.
got you.
And did I have a second? I think we had a
Yeah,
second.
I seconded it.
This is just on the agenda change. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Is that Matt there?
Aye.
Okay. He's robotized. Okay, so we have the agenda. Now let's go back to after the discussion. Oh, hi, Steve is here too. I don't know if got you in time, but I now go back to the motion for the to move to extend the ORAD by 2 years, subject to the review of a new flagging of the wetlands.
Second,
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll see this at the next meeting. Okay, Michael, I, Courtney,
aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve.
Abstain.
Yeah, I believe, okay. Okay, so the extension is done, subject to the review, and we'll have it on our agenda next week to go over the actual new delineation after it's reviewed by Joyce in the field. Okay, it is now 7:22, and let's see. Do I have the actually, is it in there? I don't think I clipped the I have the RDA for okay, 158 Farm. Okay, let me see what's in here now. Okay, I don't see the announcement. Hold on one second. Okay. Notice hereby given that the Conservation Commission in the town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology on the second day of November 2023. The request for determination of applicability hearing will be held pursuant to the Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw to consider a proposal by the applicant Flavio Colas for work within a wetland buffer zone at 158 Farm Road, map 15, lot 7A. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, so let's go.
Right, so this was an AA that was submitted for a patio upon which there would be a hot tub and an outdoor area. It sits right in the middle of the lawn on a ledge area with surrounded by rhododendron. This area is split between two wetlands that run on either side of the property. The house is here, there's a wetland on this side and a wetland on this side, and it was so close, within 94 feet on one side and 110, and they needed to get access onto the project. So we asked them to file a request for determination of applicability, which they did. And access is going to come from the driveway. Stockpiling will be in the driveway, which is back by the house and driveway area here, where things will be staged here. And then the stone patio will be fit amongst the ledge and the rhododendron on this high point. And that's the request that they have filed. And it's very straightforward. They're at the limits of the 100, but in order to give them some flexibility and to be sure access was covered, we had them file an RDA. The conditions for this would be that there would be no cutting of trees, no stockpiling in the 100-foot buffer zone. The area that for access, any driving they did in and out would be restored, which would be lawn. So it would be restored in its current condition. And that they would put an erosion control barrier at a straw wattle at a minimum on each side of the project. I've spoken with the contractor and the owner, and that was all agreeable.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commission? Or anybody, as I now try to remember, is there anybody from the audience who wants to make any comments? Seems fairly straightforward to me with those conditions. I don't have any concerns. Does anybody else have any concerns about this?
Yeah, this is Carol. It does sound pretty straightforward.
Okay, fine. I move that, anybody else want to speak? I move that we let the project go forward as a -3 with the conditions that Joyce laid out there.
Second,
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Voting, Michael, I, Kurt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
aye.
Carol,
I,
Matt.
Aye.
Okay. You can go forth, Mr. Collis, and build your thing. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're gonna put, we have to issue the permit first, so that we have to get signatures from the, all the commission members, so it will probably be issued sometime next week. And we'll forward it to the building department.
Sure. Sorry, I jumped the gun. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Let's see. We have 7 minutes. Before the let's see what we got here. We will do, I think in 7 minutes, we could do the minutes. We have a set of minutes here that we can get through here. I will share my screen. So I'll finish, we can come back to it. Let's see, share screen. Okay, folks. I will scroll down past the boilerplate stuff here. This is back in April. But I will. That's okay with everybody. Okay, let me know when you're through. Is that working for others too?
Michael, in the paragraph under minutes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down. That starts with JH recommended.
Yeah.
It says the stabilization of the planting area while the ground cover fills in. So it needs to be edited to eliminate one of those while these.
Like that was the same edit we had last time.
Oh. Maybe it didn't.
I'm only kidding. It's a whole different set of minutes, but
Yeah, that was confusing. I wasn't quite sure.
I'm going to scroll.
Yeah, cut and paste error probably.
Yeah. At least everything says Sherborn and that's some other town.
There's on the last motion, or I guess second to last motion there, to continue the Sherborn wetland regulations hearing to May 2nd. Was that actually May 4th? Or I don't remember a separate meeting then. I do remember talking about May the 4th.
May 4th. Okay. Got the wrong day of the week. Let's see. May 4th must have been the meeting time. Okay. But
I don't see any other typos here.
what's that?
I don't see any typos. I've read
Okay.
through this page.
Everybody else fine with this? Okay. I move to approve the April 13th, 2023 minutes as edited.
Second,
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Courtney,
aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Did I get everybody? Carol.
no, you didn't give me.
Carol. Okay. So at least we're treading water on the minutes, but. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Let's see here. Let me stop the share. Okay. And I gotta just save this thing here. Okay, we got that done. Let's see what else we got here, if there's anything quick. Any announcements? Is there a warrant? I didn't see one in the folder.
No warrant.
Okay. No warrant. You did the minutes. Any announcements? Anybody has? Anybody note there? I'll go through. We have, how many I see an administrative approval for 134 Lake Street for a home addition. Are there any other AAs to add here?
No, I'll add the others to the next agenda. That was Courtney's.
Okay, fine. So we've done the AAs and now it is 7:35. Okay, I now move to, I will just open the continued public hearing on the request for termination applicability at 16 Washington Street on invasive plants and work there and unauthorized work. Okay, I'll let you go. Joyce, you want to take over?
Sure. So we have Carolyn here, the property owner, and we several of us did a site walk out to the property a few weeks ago, just to get a handle on the measures that she's already taken for mitigation activities behind the existing raised garden bed and new stoned area with fence surrounding. And I did a quick sketch to outline the things that we talked about on site. Are you able to see the sketch here? So it's really, it's pretty simple, what the things that we talked about. So we're recognizing that she has already performed a lot of mitigation for invasive species removal and plantings in this area. That's a combination of buffer zone and wetlands. And went back again and added some more plantings. So we were going to be looking at that as mitigation for, there's a raised garden bed here that's very close to the wetlands, but it's a combination of activities that were there before and expansion into what was originally lawn and a pathway. And I sort of outlined where the fence is, the raised garden bed and the chicken coop sit over in this area here. So the things that we talked about were adding our small plaques. Carolyn, I don't know if we described them to you, but they're about 3 by 5, and you can affix them to. We'd like to affix them on the. I don't know if 3 fit in this area, but if 3 didn't, then we could put 1, 2, 3 on the fence that surrounds the raised garden bed. There were 3 trees. This is the driveway that sits right here, and your garage doors are on this side. We talked about putting 3 on the trees that existed right in this area here. And then we talked about just letting a 10-foot strip of the combination of lawn and mowed area, more like mowed buffer, that ran right along the edge of the banking that went down to the intermittent stream. Let that go natural. It's just the 10-foot area here. And to mark that area, we would have you put 3 concrete markers with those plaques fixed to the top. And that's sort of just a sketch to outline what we talked about. I did list up the special conditions, but mostly that was to recognize the removal of invasives and mitigation plantings and the things that are shown on this sketch. And Jacob, Courtney, Michael, is there anything that you recall, or Carolyn, that we talked about that I have either shown or you would like to add?
Did we talk about allowing continued sort of invasive management in the new planting area? Is that in your list of conditions?
I didn't add it because there was indications that this might be all she does because they would be moving on.
Oh, right.
And this is an RDA, and it's something we would welcome, and we would welcome the next person that came along if that's something they wanted to do. We could work with them on.
Okay.
Any other,
That's everything.
Catherine, does this all make sense to you?
Caroline.
Caroline, sorry.
My only concern is I have let some of that grow in, and I had our gardening firm go through, and it's multiflora rose, switchgrass, false nettle, knotweed, as well as there's bittersweet in there too. So I think we know what will happen if I don't mow it. It will go crazy. I've had to mediate. I don't know if you remember, there was like a section that was mowed and then left unmowed near Route 16, which was completely taken over by multiflora rose. In 5 years, we filled 5 dumpsters to clear it out, and it has to be continually mowed to manage, and stuff is starting to come back. So my concern is, like, this seems a little antithetical to like a happy wetland environment, because the stuff that's back there is pretty bad. And I got into this whole situation because of nettle taking over that border area.
Is nettle invasive? This is Carol.
Nettle is extremely invasive.
I haven't had that. One thing that I've had luck with, and I don't know whether this means we might want to change the conditions, is especially with multiflora rose, is that it can pretty easily be dug out by the roots, and depending on how extensive it is, well, I don't know, my husband and I were able to do it, and then if you replace it with native plants, they'll usually kind of hold their ground against the multiflora rose. But our experience definitely was that we had to dig it out by the roots.
I think in small areas that's possible. We had to remediate almost 2 acres of it. And it was just guys with chainsaws. Because you can't dig that out.
No, that sounds extensive.
So,
but we're not talking about 2 acres, right? We're talking about a relatively small strip that you
yes,
said?
and actually I already have through that area, because it was only like, dozens of relatively small plants, because it has been managed.
Okay.
But if stuff comes from the other side of that intermittent stream, which is like a lot of rows and all invasives, like we will be creating a thicket of rows.
Joyce, yeah, I mean, I don't know what other people's experiences have been. I know I've brought this up before that, you know, when I had a big invasive area in my yard, the only way I've found to keep it from regrowing is to, you know, get it out by the roots and then plant native plants and, you know, mulch it up. And that has worked. It's a bigger project in many ways, right? Like we often say to people, well, either just mow it or don't mow it. But if Caroline is interested in keeping it native, I think that's that's just what has worked for me. And I kind of
Well,
agree with her that if it
That's
doesn't,
what she did, that's what they did um, behind the raised garden bed. This area along the stream is something that we all talked about along the stream, and so,
No, I appreciate you guys trying to make it doable for me, but I think it would create a really big mess because 10 times the length of that is a lot that someone would eventually have to remediate, I think.
I'll add I don't know what people think of this, I'm curious, but in the end, having it mowed right up against the intermittent stream is not particularly good, a good quality buffer zone for that open water there, that I would say that even though it's invasive plants, that it's a lot of invasives on the other side of the stream as well, that's just what's going to be there. But I'd still say that having a vegetated buffer zone, even if it's invasives, if somebody doesn't want to replant it, since you know, I don't think you're either moving or you're not interested in removing it and replanting it.
I wish I could. I mean, I think I shared a little bit about the cost.
Oh, yeah,
of
no, I understand that.
You know, it's not
Shy of that.
feasible for most people.
Yeah, shy of that, I think that the wetlands are still better off with a 10-foot buffer zone, even if it's a bunch of invasives, but well vegetated, than having lawn up to the edge of the stream. So therefore, I would say that I agree with you that it's just going to be an invasive area, but that's still better off than just having lawn from a wetland perspective. If others, I'm curious what others think of that.
this is Carol, I agree with that.
So unfortunately, it does. I mean, whether it's just an extra 10, I mean, you have a lot of invasives on the other side of it. It's just a more a wider band of it, but I think it's still that's the lay of the land these days in some of these places.
Well, what I would propose is another tarp project at the base of that area. Because that at least is a segment that could be tarped. We could mulch it and introduce. I can't afford to do it 10 feet. It's way too much space and the soil quality isn't very good. But down at the bottom there, we think we wouldn't have to bring in more topsoil. So we could do the same thing.
What do you mean by base?
Like
Put the
down
diagram up?
it was originally garden beds, like it was large tree circles, and it was maintained as a garden for a long time until the prior owner.
is it the area you were talking about that was the switchgrass?
Yeah, that's just new this year. Like yes, it is switchgrass now. Actually, we pulled it all up.
Would it make sense to leave the proposal for right now as is, but add some sort of statement to the effect that the commission would welcome further projects in this area to limit invasives? I don't know that it would have any actual meaning unless a future.
I mean, we took up the switchgrass and did tarp it, so hopefully the switchgrass is at least very easy to remediate because it comes up so easily. But like nettle, for example, isn't, which is why we got into the tarping project, because you can't hand pull it once it takes over and it spreads, you know, underground. So that's what I would propose, because having had and spent a lot of time and resources dealing with what happens within like large areas of invasives, it just, it would be a mess.
So those areas that you're speaking of, the round areas around the tree, are outside the 10-foot strip that we're speaking of. They're not part of that, so it's really, I mean, we talked on site about you taking up the switchgrass, so. I don't know how, is that how it's not, one doesn't stop the other.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, on the topic of nettles, I was just looking at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And it says that formerly all stinging nettles were thought to be introduced nettles, European. However, many of these plants, especially in natural areas, have been recognized as a native subspecies.
I had a half acre of it, solid. It completely took over. It
Okay.
had been goldenrod prior, and then I think it was the dryness of the year they grew, but they absolutely took over everything. And I have animals that ate them, had really
But my
bad.
point is that evidently they are native.
But is there nettle in the area that we're talking about versus some other fields that you were dealing with, Caroline?
I mean, I wish I had pictures of it. It was literally just, it went from one year, it had been kind of not, there was ragweed and some other things. And I think the dryness that parched everything else, the nettle was able to completely invade. There was nothing but nettle.
Is that in this area, Joyce, that we're talking about?
I don't
No.
recall seeing anything there, no, for nettle.
Oh.
Because
so-
the nettle now gets hand pulled when it shows itself.
I mean, so you're welcome to, you're welcome to pull invasives. That's not, we're not saying that you can't. We're just saying that, to stop maintaining that, the mower was going right up to the bank. You could see where it was, right up to the bank where the edge of where the intermittent stream is. So we wanted to promote some kind of setback from that intermittent stream.
I mean,
Yeah,
based on what I'm reading, I mean, even if that all grows up as, I think I agree with Michael, if it grows up as invasives or it grows up as nettle, it's better habitat than a mowed lawn.
I think that the stilt grass was further out from the bank, because really we're just talking about right on the bank of the intermittent stream. Not having the mower go right up to it. I think you managing the stilt grass that came out further, that was around the trees in those previous garden beds. I mean, that's fantastic. That stuff is coming up everywhere like crazy lately, but
Right, so coming back, I guess we're still trying to protect the wetland itself there. And just get some sort of vegetative buffer zone there for anything. So shy of a different management plan that makes sense to us along that wetland, that sort of is still fitting in what we think is mitigation for the other areas.
Well, if I could, I actually have images of the farm right when I bought it. If I could show you, because it shows the existing stone and fencing.
So I have, so we went through this and it's the stone and fencing, whether you added it or the previous owner, it wasn't there before. So we did go through that in the very first meeting.
I have, I mean, I can show you. These are from the day I closed on the house.
But that's still, unfortunately, that doesn't make the difference in terms of what we're looking for. That we're still looking to protect that wetland there. And I guess, are you trying to say that you don't want to do that 10-foot buffer just to get to the
10
bottom line here?
feet is, I would love to have it be, I don't love that it's grass either. But I also know that if I know that some of the maintenance plans for other wetland areas actually do involve mowing, and like the areas along Route 16, and when that wasn't done and it wasn't mowed, we had huge takeovers of, in that case, rows.
Well, that we expect that they'd be there, but you'll be.
And that's why I think like the plan for that area, which I pulled, was to be mowed. Like if it, like ideally I would start with native plants there and then maintain that, but just saying like, let's grow a
Okay,
buffer of multiflora rose like is, um,
I'm not sure, are you saying that you would be willing to do some plantings in that 10-foot buffer to manage it as, to basically compete with the invasives versus, I mean, we're open to if.
I mean, I would love to be able to, but, to be candid, I'm unemployed, my husband's unemployed, you know, we spent $40,000 remediating the back.
Well,
And
it's
it
adding-
takes a lot of help to, like, I have to, you can't just go out with me and a chainsaw to remove dumpsters and dumpsters of rows. So it takes work to do this stuff, so I don't want to commit to something I can't follow through with. That is, of course, something I'd like to do.
Well, welcome to, we could put a condition in there that you're welcome to to revegetate some of that area as to whatever degree you feel you can tackle that. But we want, basically are looking for that 10-foot unmanaged, unmowed area there, but that you can manage it for invasives and do plantings. We could stick that in there as a way to allow you to do something to the degree that it fits within your time and your abilities.
How long is that whole strip?
It ran from where the trees, it looked like they were like a little well house or a little pump, a little wooden platform area. where
So
the
it's
three
pretty,
trees-
it's pretty long. It's probably,
Well, it runs from the area we stood where the trees were down around, just past the trees, the pine trees the trees that were circled with the switchgrass. So we tried to come up with a plan. You had indicated that you didn't have the resources to do an extensive project like you did before, and that nor the time and effort. So we would try to come up with something that was less intensive for you. And that was something to just basically let it be.
no,
And if you-
I appreciate that. I also appreciate that it will be detrimental to the property to do that.
And you're welcome to continue to manage the invasives within that area, but not, not necessarily to mow it.
Okay, so just pull up whatever is bad that comes over.
Yep.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So, but we'll put that in there. We'll revise it so that you can do that kind of invasives, manual invasives removal. Okay, does that mean that we can move ahead with this? And if you want to revise things or come up with a different idea, you're welcome to come back to us.
I mean, that what I was able to do was, we could do a project of like natives in that kind of lower tree circle area, because we wouldn't have to bring in topsoil, which is expensive and there's a lot of labor associated with it. The quality of soil is like not, no one that's looked at it has thought it would be good enough to reintroduce native plants and have them do well.
Well, it's right by the wetlands there. I'm surprised, but whatever. In the end, it's rare that we have people mowing right up to the wetlands. That's the sort of from our mandate to protect wetlands, that getting that kind of vegetated buffer right along the edge of, right at the wetland line is important for us versus trading it off around the tree or where the stilt grass was. So therefore, this is
that's fine. It's been, it has been maintained like that for probably 20 years, but it wasn't my choice to mow there.
Yeah,
But
okay. So at least we'll get that back and some protection. Does anybody else from the commission want to make any comments on this?
I would just make one comment that landscapers in general will tell you that you need like enriched soil and everything, but I don't know. I've had really good experience with it. Native plants are pretty well adapted to native soils. So
I tried the project once in the back without it, and it's very, very rocky where I am.
Oh, okay.
So
So
it
you
doesn't
might
work,
bring
yeah.
in some compost or something, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Any comments? Speak
I
up.
wouldn't mind seeing the pictures. I don't have a good sense of exactly, I know where the property is and actually lived at one point and not that far from there, so I'm familiar with it, but I don't know what exactly.
You see the before or the after?
I don't know. I don't have a sense of it, but may not make any difference whatsoever. So I'm not really sure I should bring it up, but I'd be curious to see them. But
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you couldn't make the site visit then. Just in general for
Alright,
people that if we miss site visits, you're often able to schedule other times with Joyce to go look at any of these sites, so that people can get their firsthand observations. But so I'm sorry in that case, Steve, that didn't work out for you. Are there any other?
Any abutters that have questions?
Okay. So we're going to go ahead with the conditions changed to allow you to do things, but you also have the ability to come back and talk with us about some modifications.
Well, and she can also plant native plants without a permit.
Right. Okay.
Besides that.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't need.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't need a permit to plant native plants. So if circumstances changed later and after you destroyed all your stilt grass, you wanted to put in native plants, you don't need a permit to do that.
Okay, that's good to know. That's great.
Good.
So I think as long as we're flexible with we write something in there for the manual invasives removal, that should hopefully cover.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay, good.
So we do want to make sure that you put up the markers. All the markers can be acquired at the conservation office. And once you get everything kind of set up, we'll do a final inspection. And this permit is good for 3 years, as far as you're covered for the invasives and the.
And I
removal.
wouldn't have to disclose anything to a future owner.
No, this is all on file at the conservation office, so if they decided to swing by, it's in our files. This is
Okay.
a public hearing,
Okay.
public records.
But this
Okay.
isn't like an order of conditions that you file at the registry.
Right.
Okay, because there are order of conditions on the property.
Right.
I think for the mitigation of,
Open orders?
no, it was
No,
for the,
no.
There was no permit for the work that was done. For the mitigation that you did for the invasives removal.
there was a piece of invasives removal when he cut a lot down right along Route 16. I thought the open condition of that was that it has to be mowed. I believe that's the condition on that.
Yeah, that one, I think that was an enforcement order, Joyce, from a while back.
Yeah.
And then handled with a NOI, whether or not that was the right way, but.
So you're saying there's continuing conditions on that?
I believe so.
Yeah, I walked through with not Audrey. Allery walked me through the various parts of the property that are supposed to be mowed. So that's that.
Okay, I'm gonna, since time is for the next hearings, I'm gonna move that we approve this request for determination, approve this activity under the request for determination applicability, and then as a -3 with the conditions that were discussed and the site inspections.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Kurt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay, we can go forth there and do that. And we can move on there. So we've resolved this for now, and
Thank
good
you.
good luck with that stuff. It's not easy. Okay. Now, we have two hearings coming up. I'm going to reopen up the continued public hearing on the Sherborn wetland regulations, discussion of possible amendments to the regulations and the drafting of that. I guess I haven't pressed Matt, but I'm not sure about that. I've created a new document that is to go back over some of the older things that were discussed quite a while ago. That I wanted to revisit all of that stuff. Some of it was even before some of the members' time. It's a file that's in the folder there. I just put it there today.
What's it called, Michael? The name of the file?
Well, you'll see it in there. It's something. It's obvious. It's something about
Okay.
non-buffer zone.
Proposed revisions to the Sherborn wetland regulations, non-buffer zone changes, Part A.
Right,
Okay.
there's part B and C that I started creating. There's some things we could just sort of walk through and look at together versus everybody should carefully review this for the next meeting. It includes some definitional issues. And I'm trying to decide now, since we have the hearing at 8:05, whether I continue this hearing just to the next time, or whether I continue this to like 8:45 or so, and we could see how long the next hearing goes. We can let it run longer. We could always move it later. And then we could sort of quickly go over what some of the issues are in that one. We'll probably only take about maybe 10 minutes or something like that, just to review what's going on there. So I would say, and if the other thing runs long and we don't have time or the energy to deal with it, we can reopen this continued hearing later on tonight and then just continue it without discussion. So people all right with me moving to continue to 8:45, and we can see how the next hearing goes and our energy is for a short discussion.
10 minutes seems perfectly reasonable, so.
Okay, then I move to continue this hearing on the Sherborn wetland regulations for new amendments to 8:45.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Darrell,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay. And perfectly timed. I will now reopen the continued public hearing for the notice of intent DEP file 283-047 on Lot B, Hunting Lane, Map 7, Lot 34, around the construction of a new single-family home and all the related features. Okay, we're back again now. Who wants to take it away?
I can.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Joe Asano, from DGT Associates. We're the project engineers on this particular project here, at 0 Hunting Lane, obviously in Sherborn. And if you guys wouldn't mind, I'd like to share my screen.
By all means.
All right. Are you guys looking at this plan and PowerPoint presentation? Is that, can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
although the map, the plan is very small.
I'll be blowing it up for you guys throughout the presentation. I have some zoomed in portions. I'm just giving a general overview of everything all at the same time at the beginning here. So the three main things. Well, first I'd like to start off by saying I'd like to provide the commission with a comprehensive update based on the comments that were received at the last hearing, so we can open up a constructive dialogue moving forward, to try to come to a common goal on this project. The one of the main things I'd like to talk about today is the proposed buffer zone impact and the proposed finished cover types that we're proposing within the buffer zone. Second thing I'd like to discuss tonight is the proposed mitigation plantings that we've come up with at this point in time. And the third thing, and I'll be brief and I can expand upon it if anybody has any further questions, is I'll explain the proposed stormwater management system that we've currently designed for the project here. So on this plan here, you'll see that we have highlighted the different areas of the buffer zone into these various shades, different colors over here. I'll start with the dark green, which represents most of the site, most of the buffer zone, 76% of the buffer zone, which will remain undisturbed throughout the entirety of this project in its natural wooded condition. The next darkest green, which you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit here, along the back side of the retaining wall at the top portion of the house and along the driveway area at the entrance to the house, will be planted with mitigation plantings, including trees, which I'll get into more detail on later, and shrubs, as well as some of the New England seed mixes, and will be allowed to just return back to normal without any proposed maintenance in these areas to allow them to just return back to the natural wooded condition. I'm going to zoom back up to the top here. This next shade of like a faded green, I'd like to call it, is an area where we're proposing a lot of shrub plantings that will all be native species, which I'll get into later again, along with the New England seed mixes. This area will be minimally maintained just for general access around the dwelling and to some of the stormwater management features, as well as sewage disposal system features that are located in this area, but generally will be allowed to just grow back into a natural condition with natural plantings. These two areas combined for 66% of the disturbance that we are proposing within the buffer zones. So 2/3 of what will be disturbed will be returned back to a generally naturalized condition. The last shade of green is this lime green color up here, which represents the lawn area. We've kept that to a very minimal 100 square feet within the buffer zone. And we're trying to plant as little grass as possible, but the lawn area in general will be out in front of the house and over the sewage disposal system, and that little bit of it is within the buffer zone. Lastly, shown in the pink and gray shades are the impervious covers making up the driveway and the roof. A small portion of the patios and stairs for the pedestrian pavement, and this portion of the roof area up here is located within the buffer zone, and the driveway down here is located within the buffer zone. I'll just come back out so you can see them all together. That makes up 4,065 square feet total of impervious cover proposed within the buffer zone, which is 8% of the buffer zone in total. I'll come back to the bottom here. Lastly, I'll bring up with regards to buffer zone impact. Since the last time we met with you guys, the wetlands across the street from Hunting Lane were flagged and located by Colonial Land Surveying and added to the plan. And a very small portion of our driveway is located within that 50-foot no alteration zone. In total, the proposed work within the 50-foot no alteration zone on our property consists of 463 square feet of disturbance. 228 of that is going to be returned back to landscaping, and then the rest of that would be comprised of the driveway. Before even knowing about this buffer zone being on the property, the applicant was adamant that some of the major trees that were located down along the frontage of the roadway needed to remain during the construction. That's actually why we have this retaining wall on the back side of the driveway and it's swooping in here. There's a very nice 34-inch maple that sits right at the corner there that we were trying to maintain, as well as some other major trees on the other side of the driveway. And the driveway was designed to minimize the slope to the maximum extent practicable, being the fact that we're on a 20 to 25% sloping lot, for safe travel, as well as to, coordinate some of the natural conditions of the site. And this was discussed with Gino Carlucci and Sean Killeen during the design process of this driveway. Second thing that I'd like to bring up today would be the mitigation plantings. I'm going to switch over to this slide here, which is a little bit of blow up. I know it's still hard to see. I can try to make it a little bit bigger for you guys for now. This table here represents all of the trees that were located by Colonial Surveying on the lot. They located 96 trees in total. 87 of them are located within various buffer zones on the site. The trees shown in green are trees that are going to remain, and the trees shown in red are trees that we're currently proposing to remove for this project. In total, we're proposing to remove 26 trees. Based on conversations that we had with Joyce to come up with the mitigation plantings, we were informed that the plantings would need to be provided 2-to-1 for all trees if we were replanting trees, and 4-to-1 if we were removing a tree and planting a shrub. This table here is just a easier breakdown of the species, type, and location of where the trees are that we're removing. Sorry, if you want to look at that for a second. Based on the conversation and to determine the amount of mitigation that was needed for the 26 trees that are going to be removed within the buffer zone. Let me get back out here. I'll start at the top of this. Let me just zoom out here. So in total, we're proposing to plant 16 2-inch caliper trees to account for 8 of the trees that we're removing, and then 72 24-inch high shrubs to account for the other 18 trees that we're removing. At the top of the site here, we're proposing to plant 62 shrubs comprised of service berries, sheep laurel, pink shell azalea, and Virginia rose around the proposed dwelling and retaining wall. And then additionally, we're proposing to plant 2 white oaks along the back side of the retaining wall here. Down at the bottom of the site here, we're proposing to plant 5 eastern redbud trees along the driveway, and a scattering of 3 river birch trees, 2 red oak trees, and 4 eastern white pine trees. Additionally, in this area, we proposed understory plantings, including 6 low bush blueberries and 4 winterberries. All the plantings proposed were selected based on the anticipated soil conditions in each area, and from the list here that from your guys's the town of Sherborn's buffer zone restoration guidelines, easy plants for dry soils and easy plants for moist soils. Lastly, I'll bring up my stormwater management side. Let me zoom in a little bit here. I know that's going to be tough to read. So for the stormwater management proposed for this project, we are proposing, and I'll show the locations later on. I'll just give you guys an opportunity to read some of the information on this slide here. We're proposing 2 dry well systems up at the top of the site that collect roof runoff, totaling 5 actual dry well structures. The dry wells are proposed to capture 87% of the roof area proposed on the property and infiltrate that stormwater back into the ground. And at the bottom of the site, we've proposed a stone line swale that comes down to a sediment forebay. And the sediment forebay then leads into a rain garden. The swale and sediment forebay provide the pre-treatment for the stormwater and have been sized appropriately based on the volume of stormwater that's going there. And the rain garden provides the treatment and the stormwater capture volume, and that has also been provided based on the standards from the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. In total, the system provides more than adequate recharge volume for standards 3 and more than adequate capture volume for standard 4 of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, even though this project is technically exempt due to the fact that it's just a single family dwelling. In summary, the proposed project disturbs less than 25% of the buffer zone, returns 2/3 of what is disturbed back to mitigated planted condition, with mitigation plantings consisting of the town's requirements and recommendations, and proposes to provide a stormwater management system that exceeds standard 3 and 4 of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. We hope that this presentation has provided the commission with the information that was requested, and hope to open that constructive dialogue moving forward to arrive at the common goal. And thank you very much for your time, and I'll open it up to you guys.
Okay, thank you. I covered a lot of material. I appreciate it. Yes, look forward to the dialogue. Before we get to Joyce, did you want to, did you have a way of going through this that you had questions about, or how do you want to?
Well, I do have a few questions, but do you want to see if the commission members have any thoughts and concerns before I get into it? I mean, that's up to you. I'm happy to do. Carol has her hand raised.
I guess that maybe we'll start with some commissioners. Yes, Carol.
Well, I think that when we saw this last time, that we gave some feedback that generally we don't allow significant new construction in the 50 to 100 or the, in the buffer zone as a whole. And most of the house is in the 50 to 100. And that means that there'll be quite a bit of alteration. I know that you're saying it's 25%, but given all the alteration that's going to happen around it, it looks like more than that to me. But in any event, I to move things out of the buffer. I'm not sure that this site has the room in it, both to protect the wetlands according to Sherborn's bylaws and build a house of this size and complexity, to be honest. So I'm kind of surprised that this is being presented as if it were applying to only the Massachusetts regulations.
I was just speaking about the stormwater with regards to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, not necessarily with regards to the entirety of the project. But yeah, okay.
Now I'm seeing the plan zoomed out, so I understand why it might be, more like a third or something that is disturbed. But the rest of my comments are still, relevant. I feel like there's been very little effort to redesign this with the houses outside of the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, his numbers are right. They're restoring a bunch, but the pink area is what I think you're now saying is about 8 or 10% of the buffer zone, is what you're saying that the pink area is?
In total with the driveway. Yeah, so the gray area being the driveway entrance down here, the small little portions at the bottom of the stairwells from the pedestrian patios and or behind the garage area here, and the house in total with roof area is 8% of the buffer zone on the property. Not to mention that over 45% of the property is wetland. Which obviously we're not, you know, we're not going there, but,
So am I reading your am I reading your table wrong? Because it talks about post-development. You have 10% house is in the 0 to 50, I mean the 50 to 100. And then you have in the buffer zone, you have 5.1% of the driveway is in the buffer zone. So it's more like when you look at the impervious surface, you have more than that. I'm just trying to follow your numbers here.
as a total, the buffer zone, so there's 0% in the 0 to 25. There's like, when you total it all together, the entire
Yep.
buffer zone, the 52,000 square feet of buffer zone on the property. In total, the proposed roof area and driveway consist of 8% of that 52,000 square feet that's proposed. I tried to give a breakdown of every zone to,
Right, yeah, I'm just looking at the
Yep.
last column there.
yeah.
I guess I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, Joyce, that
Yeah,
the roof area is 2,800 square feet of roof area.
So 0 to 50 in the 50 to, if the 50 to 100, the third column over, you have 10.4%.
That's of that just the 50 to 100, I guess.
yeah. That's between the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer. So it's excluding the first 50 feet of the wetland buffer zone.
Okay. Oh my goodness, that's okay.
I thought I was
Alright.
making it clearer by breaking it down by each zone.
I appreciate that.
No, that's
If I
fine.
confused if I
Right.
confused you, I apologize. That was my goal, was to provide a clearer thing,
No,
but you know.
I think you did. For me at least, I appreciate that level of detail at the top there. Others can't maybe see it. I mean, I have it on my own screen blown up. You could maybe blow that up there. Oh yeah, it's right there. I guess you could blow it up a little more.
All right, I didn't understand. Now that you said it, I can see what you're talking about. All right.
I mean, we can go back to your point, Carol. What other commissioners want to talk about, note at this point?
I would just add that I sort of agree with Carol and her point of view, and I'm a little surprised that these projects like this, where it's building in an undisturbed, undeveloped property, it seems like there's no way that you can possibly build a house here without being in the buffer zone. And so I'm kind of curious why it's gone this far without it being brought to our attention.
Well, I don't think there's any, Troy, oh, okay, you can answer. if you
No,
want.
yeah. So I mean, this is the project they brought before, Steve, and then they left the last meeting with this same proposal with some of your comments. So it's not like it's suddenly here. That this is they're building on what the comments came from before.
But not before there was a building, before there was some plan to build a specific building. Is that correct? And
No,
driveway.
no. I mean, this was their proposal. So.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that maybe before they'd even start designing driveways and buildings, that I guess because you have to build in the buffer zone, that is what giving me a little pause.
Yeah,
I
no,
think the feedback in the last meeting was that, generally we don't allow new buildings in undisturbed buffer. So, and I think that's my concern is is there a difference from what we saw in the last plan, and how much of a difference is there? There still is a lot. The majority of the house is still in the 50 to 100 undisturbed buffer.
I mean,
So
right.
why hasn't there been an effort to move that or reduce the scale or something?
I mean, they've changed, now we see the quote unquote mitigation plantings areas, which wasn't clear before, that the whole backup.
So, but a
Backup
mitigation
solar.
planting in undisturbed buffer, like, that's not really mitigation.
Well, I'm saying, but before, we didn't know that was all altered area to some extent at the time, at least when I first saw it, it looked like all that would be altered as well, in addition to the house. So I'm not defending it one way or another, and people have their right to stick with what they want to do. And so, right, in the case of Steve, right, people do varying levels of talking to us first versus they come forth with what they want. And then they work from there. It's fairly typical. But yes, it's, they might have changed what much is lawn or anything else around the house for all I know, because I couldn't tell from the first plan, but they haven't changed the house plan in response to those comments, which is something they can do. Do other people have comment? Oh, what are you gonna say?
So I was gonna just say, when we did the sidewalk, we did ask the homeowner, for kind of an alternatives analysis as to, I was not here for the last meeting. I did go through the minutes. But I was on the sidewalk, and one of the things we had requested was some kind of an alternatives analysis for why this house needed to be where it was, just so that it's something that we could document. And he did have some very good reasoning for why things were located where they were. Property line setbacks, slope of the property, septics, things like that, well locations, but they aren't necessarily documented for us to point to as we go forward with the discussions. I thought that I don't know if it's appropriate for me to go on with some of my comments, Michael.
Sure.
So I thought you all did a great job addressing stormwater. I thought that you are dealing with a challenging site, and there's you put a good effort forth in dealing with what's definitely going to be a problem as far as this is a very steep slope. You're creating a lot of impervious surface up at the top. And you're addressing things as you go along. So with the stormwater basin and with the roof infiltration, I thought that was very helpful. One of my concerns is, and now I'm just moving towards additional information, is that during construction, let's just say that if this were permitted, I would like to see a temporary erosion control plan, construction entrances at the entrance, check more erosion control, maybe checkpoints, not just one around the limit, maybe temporary detention basins, things that will help before you get things online, because we've had problems on several sites throughout the town that are on these steep slopes, and you have a wetland directly across the street that this is just going to channel right down to. I've seen you have O&M plans and the like, and I'm not sure that we're getting into the detail for that, but I did not see this. Sorry, I did not see this plan. So you've got some. Why don't you go through and talk about what your temporary this plan refers to?
Yeah, so this plan was submitted with the original filing. This plan represents our current erosion sediment control plan. We've dedicated 2 temporary stockpiling areas, one at the lower portion of the site, and one up at the top portion of the site. Due to the fact that we're on a pretty good slope here, and the way that we've positioned the house with regards to where the full portions of the basement are going to be, and this, that, and the other thing, the excavation that's going to be required for the foundation is actually going to be minimized. Part of the house is actually going to be in the air, and then another portion of the house is going to be in the ground. So we're going to be doing some of this by where the house is proposed, so we can limit the amount of stockpiled material that needs to be kept on the site at any point in time. So that's why I got these two temporary stockpile areas. We're proposing right now we have a staked fiber log backed with a silt fence, all the way around the downhill portion of the proposed work, as well as with regards to the wetland buffer zone, and then, additionally down at the edge of the roadway here. This might need to be modified slightly, just because, again, this plan was submitted with our first filing. It hasn't been updated to include the buffer zones from the wetland across the street, but we do have erosion sediment controls that are currently still being proposed to prevent the stormwater from getting out in, or the runoff from the construction site to be getting out into Hunting Lane. And then we do have the proposed construction tracking pad out at the front of the site here, where the proposed driveway is planned to be under the final condition. And we have, we're proposing, we have a silt sack for the catch basin that's out in front of the site as well. And then, we have, I won't read through the litany of notes that we have, but we have quite a few notes detailing the standards that we hold to the contractor for types of work with regards to work within buffer zones and just general construction standards for sites. So I am definitely willing to get into more detail on this plan if required. But we did provide this with the original filing.
All right, did you provide details for the retaining wall in this?
I did not. Well, you know what? I take that back. I might have a retaining wall detail.
Like height, like
Yeah,
the top and
sorry,
bottom elevations?
Yeah, it was yeah, I mean, I think right now we're just proposing a modular block retaining wall with some impermeable barrier behind, and then a minimal footing. The walls really aren't too significant. We've kept all walls under 4 feet tall, to prevent the need for structural walls. So that generally we'd be looking at more of like a modular block wall. Nothing super major with big footings and things like that.
All right. The planting area, if you could go back to the planting areas around the house.
Yes, I
So
can.
you've
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
So you've taken and placed all your plantings up against the foundation. I'm assuming, is this a walkout basement?
I don't believe so. I'll defer to Connor, but I didn't see, the only area where there's a walkout is see where this tree number 87 is labeled? There's this covered porch, there's a walkout area right here where you can exit out, and there's like a little like seated area right here. But other than that, there's no access doors out the back of the site here.
Joe, it's actually the bump out, the square below that is the porch as well. The walkout is underneath that part.
Oh, okay, so right here where tree number 85 is labeled, where the 14-inch maple is where the walkout is right here.
All right, so the front of the house is 130, elevation 130-ish. And you have a contour 120 going into the back of the house. I don't, because there's no spot elevations here, so I'm trying to figure out, is it so, and you've got stairs coming down on both sides of the house. I think it's hard to tell because
it will be built like it would be a walkout.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, 118,
All right.
118.5, 119.5. I got spot shots down around the back here. We're gonna do a whole building height analysis to confirm that the building wasn't over 35 feet tall and not zoning.
All right. So you're taking and you're putting all your shrub plantings in the backyard, and you're using, there's a retaining wall that surrounds it. Are you saying that you're creating habitat with these new plantings? It's not going to be a mowed area, or is it going to be maintained? How are you gonna How does it
There-
provide
there's-
habitat being so close to the wall and the foundation?
There's there's gonna be no grass at all. That the area of grass that's actually shown on the plan is probably just gonna be a mulch bed with some shrubs. I don't anticipate any grass in the buffer zone whatsoever.
For maintenance too, I had mentioned during the presentation, I know I went over a lot of stuff really fast, or as fast as I could to try to get through everything, but I think the plan in this area here is it'll be minimally maintained. Just because, again, we have some of the more important features for the sewage disposal system down here, being that the septic tank and pump chamber are located down here, as well as the 5 dry wells. The access ports of these structures will be down here. So we'll need to acquire access to these things for just regular scheduled maintenance. I'm not saying that we're gonna be, back there with a lawnmower once every other week, cutting the stuff, or, trimming the hedges and stuff like that. I think the plan would be to let everything grow naturally for like a year and have, maybe a twice a year cutting program going on back there, just to keep everything, not overgrown and be able to be maintained and whatnot. But I don't believe that we're trying to have that be a manicured landscape looking area right now.
So can you speak to what type of habitat you're trying to provide?
We're providing the best that we can in the area that we have. We're planting a native plants that are acceptable in the area, that generally conform to the vegetation that you would see in a buffer zone, and we're doing the best with the area that we have.
I don't know if you had other things. I wanna,
No, nothing, nothing.
I'll
at the
get
moment.
it to come in there before you speak, Carol. That I want to come back to the higher level issue, or here of whether we need to have, whether it's you, Connor, or Joe, speak to the sort of quote unquote alternatives thing of whether, to what extent that, I mean, there's a lot of good work here in terms of within the existing plan there. And I think we just need to resolve the higher level issue that Carol and Steve brought up about to what extent that there are options to simply have less building in the buffer zone, since that's sort of our part of protecting the wetlands, is to sort of minimize this kind of alteration there. But so therefore, I think we can just spend some time trying to figure out if this is where it is, or whether there's any alternatives or not, before we start getting into the nitty gritty of this part or that part, or there, which obviously we can get into where the plantings go. Is it more mixed? Is it more of what's the management plan for that area? Some areas are mowed this or that. That kind of nitty gritty we could all sort out. But to get to that point, I just want to resolve that highest level issue of essentially, I see this one can claim it's a temporary disturbance of all that area that in the light green and middle green or pale green, but we have the essential, you can understand via that the driveway itself, there's that you need access, that there's a little there's probably less options there given the terrain, but they're close to 2,800 square feet of building. I guess that's the main, when I look at the total in the buffer zone, that's really I guess the 1,000 square feet of vehicular. I guess it's surprising to me that that's 1,000 square feet at the bottom. But I could see that's a little tricky to have an alternatives. So let's come back to the house of the there, and if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so Michael, I can speak to that a little bit. So this site, it's 4 acres, but despite it being 4 acres, it's like a 40, 50-foot climb from the road. It's a big hill. When you factor in the wetland buffer zones, the setbacks, there's not a lot of space to put a house. The house is currently pushed up as far as it can go against the setback. If you see at the top left corner, putting the house is also the location of the house is also dictated by where we are forced to put the SAS, the septic system or the soil absorption system, which needs to be 125 feet away from the buffer zone. You see how it's oriented at an angle, kind of along the contours of the buffer zone. That is very intentional because that's where it works, given the topography, the slope, where the soil perked, and kind of the distance from the wetland buffer zone. Based on where that's at, right, you have to wrap the driveway around, and then the approach, sufficient approach to the house, right? So we have to put the garage, and basically everything has been kind of dictated by the topography lines, the setbacks, where the wetlands are. We spent the better part of 3 years trying to optimize this to minimize the encroachment on the wetlands. Trust me, if we didn't have to have this hearing, we wouldn't be having this hearing, because we would have it outside the buffer zone, but we can't. So we did everything we could to kind of minimize the impact while also, having a house that we would like to live and raise our children in, and considering kind of where the neighbor's house is located, as well, trying to provide as much space in between where we will be and where they are, because we have a neighbor directly to the left. I think we, after focusing on, so on the driveway, there is that is the least steep approach. So for safety purposes, and kind of minimizing impact to the trees, that we picked that particular route to avoid trees, even before we thought they were in the buffer zone. And now that they're in the buffer zone, all the better. We avoided as many as we could not hit. And we tried to get the driveway out of the buffer zone as fast as possible. As you can see, it comes in, goes to the left immediately. That was very intentional. Part of the reason you haven't seen the house move is because we've already tried really, really hard to get the house out of the buffer zone and get everything out of the buffer zone as much as we could. And now what we'd like to talk about is how can we mitigate the impact of the 8% of the buffer zone that we are impacting sufficiently. And my understanding was we're meeting the town's guidelines with mitigation plantings of 4-to-1, 2-to-1, and we're willing to talk about other things that might be helpful here, but it's not really feasible for us to do much more with the location of the house. We really did try here. We also have, sorry, just one more point. We also have very, very careful and tricky height restrictions because of the steep slope. Sherborn requires 35 feet, no more, but starts counting at the bottom of the lowest mean grade. And because a lot of the house is going to be starting at a low mean grade because of the steep grading, everything has been pretty carefully, I think we're off by an inch, right? So like moving anything at all throws a lot of other things into kind of issue, along with the grading from the house to the septic. Everything has been very, very carefully engineered here to work.
Okay. Your commissioners want to react to that presentation?
Well, I think it's helpful to understand all the setbacks for the septic system and, the zoning setbacks from the side lot line and whatnot. Right. I mean, it sounds like several commissioners are in agreement about the driveway in terms of alternatives analysis, that there's really no other alternative unless you're going to take a helicopter onto the site.
I'm happy to do that if you are willing to provide one.
Oh. We won't go down that interesting line, but
I mean, I guess one thing that I wonder when I see something like this and, you know, the comment that you've been working on it for 3 years is that I feel like our regulations are pretty clear that we generally would, you know, don't want disturbance in the 50 to 100. And so while I understand that you've done everything possible to accommodate all the setbacks and everything like that, from the point of view of wetland regulation, this is not a good project. And so I guess, you know, to me, I feel like this is, it's not something that I would vote for.
I mean, I don't think our regulations are super clear that, you know, we don't want any disturbance in the 50 to 100. I think our regulations are super clear that we don't want anyone to mess with the first 50 feet.
Well, I mean, our regulations do say that we protect 100 feet from the wetlands.
But we don't, I mean, at least the way they're currently written, we don't treat the second 50 feet as a no alteration zone, the way we treat the first 50 feet. You know, and we have approved buildings in the outer buffer zone. I'm not saying like one way is right or wrong, but you know, we are working on our regulations, but the way it currently stands, it's not, we don't say 100-foot no alteration zone. We say there's a 50-foot no alteration zone. But I mean, I agree, certainly an undisturbed buffer zone is treated differently than a previously disturbed one, but
I mean, it's on the applicant to demonstrate that the disturbance won't have an impact, right? Won't have a negative impact on the wetlands. And I guess to me, I don't see that demonstration.
Then the question is to ask, right, I agree with Courtney that I don't think that we treat that outer buffer zone as a no alteration zone. And that there is some burden. The question is on us to say, in this case, for that outer buffer zone, there's not that, what information do we want? Specific information that we want that would to show that it's mitigated, or that there is an adverse impact. And so we have to have, I think in this case, we'd have to be clear about what it is that we're worried about in terms of that it's going to adversely impact the wetlands, and what it is that we're asking for about that issue, or what we're concerned about for them to address. And so I'm sort of with Courtney that I don't see that this, by definition, is not a permittable project because of this level of use. I mean, it
well,
isn't
like
a tremendous amount, but whatever.
yeah, it's not a insignificant amount, but it's also whatever percentage as a permanent alteration of the outer buffer zone. And they are, what to Michael's point, you know, for example, in terms of the stormwater and the water infiltration, you know, all that impervious area, they're infiltrating the runoff. So I guess I'm just looking for specifics, you know, okay, then what about tree cover, you know, and shading? I'm like, is that significantly altering the resource area, or what do they need to show?
Right, it's against the different interests of the act that we're trying to look at. I guess I'll let Steve talk, since I think you had his hand up for.
Yeah, just a very brief point, or a short point, I think, is to call the first 50 feet a no alteration zone does not, to me, imply that the next 50 feet are an alteration zone. Or it should be just like, we can do this. I mean, we all know that the wetland buffers are a little bit arbitrary in terms of 100 feet may not be enough in some cases, maybe enough in other cases.
Well, that's
Thank you.
incumbent on us.
Well, I think that the term no alteration zone is in the bylaw connected directly with the inner 50 feet. I think that was the point.
Does that imply that the outer buffer zone is an alteration zone? Or yes, okay?
It can be, and unless we strengthen and change our rules and regulations, so to speak, that yes, it's not inviolate. And we would have to see what basis we have for that with our bylaw and how we do that in our regulations, which is what we're in the process of trying to do. But we do have to have a regulatory basis for saying that that outer buffers, that I don't think we have the regulatory basis for saying that that outer zone is inviolate, even if it's unaltered. And the question is what the specifics, when you go back to what are the different interests of the act, and you go and look at buffer zone guidebook and whatever else, whether those alterations in that outer buffer zone are going to cause some significant adverse impact on the wetlands. And for when I go through the stormwater, the different interest of protection of groundwater, pollution prevention, that I think some of these things can be addressed either with the stormwater or also with conditioning about what chemicals are used on the property. For example, in terms of for snow removal stuff or any pesticides, for any fertilizers, we can address some of that to deal with the pollution prevention interest as one of the trickiest ones. I think many of them are addressable, are even in this case, but the wildlife habitat is by far one of the more trickier ones that we always, that at least I always often struggle with. And whether just as we're doing on the another large project of, is the landscaping that's going to be restored and put back in there, is that amenable to habitat, as was brought up when Joyce was talking about it? And what creatures are we trying to protect there? And even when you look at the buffer zone guidebook, right, to some extent, there's 8% number, if that's whatever, assuming it's correct, spread over that whole area basically implies that there's on average a 90-foot buffer zone or 92-foot buffer zone. And when you look at the buffer zone guidebook, unless we have to go find more evidence, that's quite good for a lot of the interest there. For certain creatures, it obviously isn't. They want more than 100 feet, but I'm not quite sure what it is we would like to see, either in defending that it's not going to have an adverse impact from them, or conditioning that would better ensure that there's no adverse impact. But in terms of just getting through the house size and intrusion, that they're basically telling us they don't want to change the house size. We've had it before where they've done it and they've moved it. People were willing to, and then even under construction, they came back recently in another place and they moved the house back for other reasons. So I think we're left with, what do we want from them in terms of, given this footprint of the impervious area, given that we condition other parts, is where I come back to.
I mean, Michael, I guess I agree with many of the things you're saying. I think one of the questions I'd have, just looking at the footprint, there's a large patio, there's various things that appear as if the footprint could be, or parts of the footprint of the house could be shifted more to the out of the buffer zone. So I understand what Mr. Connor said, but I guess unfortunately, the way this map is, this plan is shown, it's hard for me to see where the setbacks are and where those constraints are, except what we heard in those comments.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, it gets to a point of whether.
Joe,
Yeah,
can you
I have
highlight the
trouble with how far I can micromanage what it is the shape of the house should be, whether, yes, the whole covered porch should be house and that kind of stuff.
Right.
That I have limits as to for my own view of all this, that you can ask and try to get people out. But right, to some extent, they can decide that this is where they want to take a stand. As to the
Well,
one.
I mean, I'm asking a question. It looks like they're about to explain something here.
Okay, sure.
I'm clearly, as you can see, very bad at using the mouse to draw feature. But we did highlight the building envelope on the plan. It was shown to kind of outline that, you know, the corner of the house here is 42.3 feet. The setback in this zone is 40 feet. You know, so we've left a little bit of a construction tolerance there, you know, to minimize, you know, not having to re-pour the foundation a couple of times because we put it in the wrong spot. But generally, we're at the side setback here for the building, and that is where the building envelope is outlined, just for illustrating purposes.
Joe, can I, Mr. Lozano, can I ask you a quick question about that? So, you know, I'm seeing that the 40 feet points to the, you know, the top left corner of the building, but a lot of the building is looks like another 40 feet to the right of that. Yeah, like right.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be possible to move more of the building so that it's parallel to the setback?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a perfectly straight house with just one long hallway, but that's not the, you know, a house that anybody wants to live in. So I think from an aesthetics and livability perspective, yeah, I mean, we could make the house exactly the contour of the setback in the buffer zone, but that's not realistic.
Or Mr. Connor, even, you know, a mirror image of it would have a smaller portion in the buffer zone.
I mean, we worked with an architect to try to design a house that was livable and also as out of this buffer zone as possible. The shape and contours of the house are kind of fixed at this point, from my perspective. We really tried to get it out of the buffer zone.
So it sounds like we probably need I would think a couple things just based on what we've talked about. And I missed, I think, the first meeting that we had, and I don't know if there was a walkthrough, but I wasn't at that either. But it sounds like there's sort of two things that might be helpful. One would be some more information or a statement about you know, how and why there are no alternatives, dealing with the setbacks, dealing with the height restriction, the things you've mentioned. But it's and forgive me if you've already provided this, but I haven't seen it yet. Something like that that we could review. And then also, because of the issue with so much in the buffer zone, another statement about the, you know, how that will, even though it's in the buffer zone, it is causing no adverse effect, or you know, minimizing the adverse effect through mitigation and through other measures. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. It seems like staking out those two positions might help us sort of have a path forward here. And again, forgive me if I missed something because I wasn't at an earlier meeting.
Thanks, Kurt.
What do other people? I mean,
I think my questions might be better postponed to a sort of when we get into the details segment. So let me know if you agree, Michael. But I would like to go understand the stormwater design a little bit more. Maybe go through an example of sort of where the catch basins are on the plan and sort of what's draining to those areas. And then the planting plan. I'm a little concerned that it's not targeted towards establishing the borders of the disturbed areas such that they come back as natives rather than. I know I saw that there was a note in the plan about pulling up invasives by sort of having the contractor do that, but I'm worried about a more longer term establishment of that border back as native plants.
Okay, but yeah, I guess we have to figure out how to that whether we do in two parallel paths here. I mean, Kurt's. I guess basically those are the two higher level thorny issues that as he brought them up, and whether just having statements from Connor and your team addressing those 2 points, I think would be useful for us to just have and consider. I'm not sure I'd like to be, I mean, for myself, as just one person, I recognize that, right, this is where the house is. The alternatives analysis is to what extent I see the rationale, and to some extent people want to build a house the way they want to build a house, whether you call it livable or just that's what your preference is. And I don't feel that I have any leeway to just sort of invalidate that. The issue of the second one, though, right, I'd like to be more specific about the issue of what concerns people have from the commission side. Is it about wildlife habitat? I mean, this is always the issue of what's in the outer buffer zone. What specific issues would you like them to address, and sort of being able to say that there's not going to be any adverse impact on the wetlands? Were there any specific things you want besides them going through a statement against the different interests and values of the wetlands? Is there anything specific to give them more concrete guidance as to what we're looking for?
Michael, I guess I would say that for me, it would be helpful. I do see that a lot of the incursion into the 50 to 100 eliminates habitat and fragments habitat. There may be opportunities outside of, I don't know what the opportunities actually are. I'm not going to suggest them to have further mitigation, because one of the issues that we get into with habitat that's relatively undisturbed is it's almost more difficult to mitigate because the habitat is already undisturbed. So perhaps they could give some more thought to that.
Okay, so the wildlife habitat issue in particular. Are there other guidance we want to give them for that statement? I mean that. Okay, yeah, I mean, right, we used to, habitat is a tricky one since that one extends well beyond 100 feet in terms of the science. But our jurisdiction ends there as to what, and so it gets a little tricky to say, fine, at the top part of the lot, for example, they're not gonna, I don't know what they're planning on doing. It's outside of our jurisdiction, beyond north or whatever, above the patio, I'll call it, from a plan point of view.
I think, Michael, erosion control, I think someone, maybe Joyce mentioned, would be another topic.
Oh, yeah, but I think those are all, I'm trying to get at the bigger picture. I mean, I think there's a lot of nitty gritty, like Jacob brought up, that I think we could all work out together. That I'm actually goes about to advocate that, even though it's been an hour, that I wouldn't mind whether we do this issue of that they can provide that kind of information, and whether it's still useful to how actually we can get that at the next meeting, but whether to, I mean, it seems maybe a little presumptuous of me, but my sense is that that I feel like this is permittable, and it's a matter of now the devil in the details of just going through just to sort of how the landscaping is done, how it's managed, how the erosion control is done, the temporary erosion control issues that Joyce can go over with them even off in between the meetings, that Joyce could work with them on that, and looking at the stormwater calcs. I don't know whether she's looked at it as carefully as need be, but that we can go over them to see whether what storm, I don't know what you used for a 50 or 100-year storm. Like, I guess now, I assume if you met standards 3 and 4 of the DEP standards, then I guess that's probably using what is now the regulatory requirement. That'll change probably in the next 3 to 6 months, that they'll have probably larger storm volumes that the stormwater has to deal with, but that's not part of the regs at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about, right. I see a lot of driveways in town where now there's a whole new driveway, and the idea of capturing it all at the bottom with that one little swale off to the side, depending on how carefully they really pave that driveway and get the right tilt. That's going to be a thing, but we'll probably have a condition about, if we go forward, there'll be a condition about making sure that there's no significant runoff into the road, and that they would have to go adjust the project if after a significant storm. We don't have that, but that we have on other projects that I've seen where we put that condition, and you have to go back to the drawing boards and figure out something.
Michael, I wonder though, if, I mean, for me, it would be helpful to proceed in the way that Kurt mentioned first, so that we kind of have the opportunity to look at the bigger picture. And we're gonna have another hearing anyway, so at that point we can address some of these more detailed issues. I guess it seems like you're going in the direction of saying, let's address these detailed issues now, but I think it would be better to address the bigger issue first.
Well, I was suggesting parallel paths, so we can get through this, because from my own point of view, I have a feeling that we'll probably find a way to be permitting this in roughly its form, or I don't know what changes would come up, but that if it's useful to to move it along without being presuming that the project to be approved, we can give some feedback as to what other specifics we'd want to hear from them, so that the next meeting is more productive. If we work out something on the higher level issues that we just talked about. So I was just trying to think of whether, if it makes sense to the applicant, that address the two kind of things that Kurt brought up with the guidance we've given for the next meeting. And the question is whether, in addition to that, we want to give them some other points to move forward on in the next meeting, even though one might say that might be jumping the gun, so to speak. But from my point of view, probably wouldn't be. And if they're willing to invest the time in that, it could move things along. So I'm proposing a parallel path. I don't want to spend much more time tonight, as opposed to whether there's some set of specific sort of conditioning things that we want to get them to refine for the next meeting. Like I would say, the landscaping on the outside in that light green area where I know you need access to some of the pump chamber and some of the dry wells, whether to consider the fact that if it's going to possibly serve as some sort of wildlife habitat, sort of mitigation there, whether it is somewhere, what the specific plantings, the grass, I can't tell whether it's somewhere you say what the specific ground cover is going to be, or whether also from a habitat point of view, consider whether the plantings aren't just simply lined up along the sides, whether there's some areas where it can be mixed in, but maybe that doesn't change the habitat value that much to do it differently, but to consider that. I don't know, Joyce could give them some other specifics about the erosion and stormwater calcs if necessary. But are there any other conditioning? And often we condition without any chemicals and pesticides and whatever. Are there other issues people want to give them some sort of request?
Joseph, in your stormwater calcs, Joseph, you talked about your, you referenced your HydroCAD calculations, but I don't see them. AutoCAD, I mean, yeah, HydroCAD calculations, and I don't see those.
Yeah, I actually, I thought about that today, but I didn't know if it would be worse if I sent you something last minute that you didn't have the chance to review, or if I just didn't send it to you and sent you something updated between now and the next hearing. I was trying to avoid the aggravate. I understand sending something at the last minute is every commission members, you know, they don't have the chance to review it. They don't like that. So I almost thought it was better to just not send it and send you the updated one on the next go around. I have the printouts ready to go. I can share them with you. No problem.
And so and the other thing was you referenced the color plan that you submitted as your updated plan with all the plantings on it. You made a comment that you hadn't updated the plans. What did that mean?
I hadn't updated what?
The plans, like you hadn't updated something. What did that mean?
So the way this plan was like an exhibit plan. This was more for like a discussion item. I really wanted to, you know, gauge your guys's, just general feel for the mitigations that we were proposing and things of that nature. I didn't update my like stamped site plan like with a full revision and like a formal submission in. I was trying to, you know, keep this as more of a discussion piece moving forward. Because I felt like a lot of the comments that we received at the last meeting were basically outlining that we had provided you guys insufficient material to even provide us with constructive criticism. So this material was to kind of get to that point where, you know, we could have some constructive criticism and try to, you know, again, move forward with the project somehow. I will update the plans to include these plantings and, you know, any other comments from tonight, you know, with a full stamped revised set on upon, you know, the next filing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess right, I guess we can ask for that, or if we're gonna do commenting on things like landscape, if we get down to the level of commenting on landscaping plans, whether do we need all of, I'm trying to maybe avoid extra cost for the applicant of new plans if we're gonna basically start, if we come to some agreement about this overall plan and start working on landscaping issues, for example, of whether there could be more trees in some areas versus mitigation trees in some areas versus others, that whether to hold off if there's nothing going to be significantly revised substantively, that we could then save that intermediate step, if that makes any sense. Because I could believe that we're going to have some comments if we move ahead with on how the landscaping mitigation is done. So I think if we're leaving it this way and people can comment, it seems like we need to address the things, let's say, as Kurt brought up, and particularly the wildlife habitat. And maybe thinking of how the plantings and the mitigation areas support that mitigation on the wildlife habitat are the two things. I'm not sure what other, and you can give more details on the stormwater calcs, on the HydroCAD stuff or whatever. And I guess you can go back and forth depending on when you have time, Joyce, to review that and give them any feedback before the meeting even.
Right, that would have been helpful. Sorry.
Are there other specifics that we want to see for next, let's say, before the next meeting? Before we deal with those overview things and see if we come to terms with that.
Several, the commission members had some very good comments, and I will put those together. If any commissioners think about this in the next day or two, or, you know, by say Tuesday of next week, and want to add any comments so that we can get them to them to address.
Yeah,
verbally,
okay.
verbally, if not in response, but at least to think about, if you could let me know.
Yeah, I would like to say people give it to her by the end of Monday, close of business. So, for us. Okay, this is all as a way forward. Does this make sense to everybody here? Joe, Connor, whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to, so I just wanted to make sure that if I understood Kurt correctly, I wrote this down, I was kind of scribbling it, so, in your alternatives analysis, the main points that you would like us to bring up would be, why the house needs to be where it is and our justification for its placement and location, everything about it, and how if we leave it where it is, it will have no adverse effects to the buffer zone. And one of the specifics that we'd be looking for with proving the no adverse effects would be its impact to the natural habitat in that area. And to explain how the plantings that we're proposing will help support that non-impact to the habitat that we would be trying to justify.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Okay.
If everybody else has any, does that sound all right to everybody else?
Yeah, sounds good.
Understood.
And you know where to ask questions as that goes along. By all means, feel free to bother Joyce with any thoughts about that. Okay, fine. So we just need to continue this hearing to the next time. What time do we want to do that?
Is that question for the applicant here, or?
I guess it's more for us to start with, and then we'll see what works for you guys.
Okay.
But
Do you feel that you'll be ready for the next meeting? A week in advance of the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I'm looking to you.
November
I mean, it wasn't a huge process for us to have to continue. I'll just say yes, we can provide you with the material, but we'll try to give you as advanced notice as possible if we feel that we can't get you a response in proper time to continue to the following hearing, if that's appropriate.
Sure, that often happens. So
Okay.
we recognize.
So in that case, I would suggest we do like, so we have
Yeah, you can put us last.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. So
What
we
is
do
it?
have, if I could quickly go through what we have
Yeah.
an RDA that was submitted that they may or may not withdraw. Then we have I don't know if did you continue the town regulations to a date certain? I missed that.
No, we didn't do that yet because we actually
Okay.
look at it. We might not look at it tonight, but we still have to continue.
Okay, so then we have the regulations,
Yeah.
and then we have this.
Okay.
So why don't we do, I don't know what's gonna happen with the RDA, but let's say that's 7:20.
So we do have some work on the regs that we could spend some time on. So we could want to try 8 o'clock on this, or
On this one, yeah, sure, let's do this at 8 o'clock and do the regs
does that work for you, Joe, Connor?
Yep, I can be available.
Yep, that works. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, we'll do 8 p.m. And the other one would be right. The reg would be 7:20, and then we could fit that in. Okay. And
what do you want to do you want to do the regs at 7?
Well, we'll come back to that one after this.
Okay.
Let them go.
Can I ask one question before you continue this hearing? Is if we're gonna have the hearing, I believe it would be on the 16th, correct? When would you want me to get you, like, does it have to be on the 9th? Is that when I would need to get material to you by, or is there a date later than that? Like when's my cutoff to get material to you by?
A week before the meeting,
So the
or
9th.
the Wednesday before the meeting.
A Wednesday, so the 8th.
The end of the day, I guess, do we, for this? I mean, yeah. Preferably, I don't know whether we want to, for this particular stuff, we're looking forward to give them another day.
Well, let's see what you can do. You
Yeah,
can
Okay.
always communicate with us and let us know.
All right, sounds good. I just wanted to have a cutoff in mind.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, unless anybody has any other issues, I'm going to move to continue this hearing on Hunting Lane to 8 PM on November 16th.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I, Steve,
Although I may not be able to be here for that meeting.
no, okay. Jacob,
Hi.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving along. I guess we didn't ask if anybody from the public had any comments. I blew it again. You guys got to help me out with that one. I do that. I see Peter here. Are you here for any particular issue, if I might ask? Okay. Okay. I am now, it's late. I am now going to reopening the hearing on the on the Sherborn reg changes drafting. Do people will have 5-10 minutes to just sort of walk you through something, or not?
Michael, I have to say that my brain has very little capacity at 9:30 at night. Like, if you keep it to 5 or 10 minutes, that's great, but then I would like to just be directed on what you want us to look at so we can respond.
That's it. I will do that. I will do that to whatever it's worth. And I will, once I get the share screen, somebody can start timing me. And let's see where I put it here. Let's see. Okay, sorry, the wrong thing opened. Okie dokie. Let's see. And the clock is ticking. I don't know, you probably can't even read this thing, it's probably too small. This is some old material there we started quite a while back, some of it before your time. I've been breaking it up into various pieces. There are things here to just read through. There are some definition issues, which one of important ones about seeing consistency about what credible evidence is and cumulative effect. I even have a comment here that we have to go look up what effect versus impact means, because we often talk about adverse impacts. I can't tell whether it should be adverse effects because we talk about effects. So something people can look up definitions and look at how the regs are written now as to what words we need to use here to be consistent. And so there's a set of new definitions here. And some time periods. There's a little bit of information here on burden of proof.
Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just completely lost because this doesn't look to me like the document we were working on before. Are they?
Of course, no, this is everything but that document. We had a whole set of changes. Okay, I'll step back.
Yeah, step back and tell us what we're seeing, and because you created this document, is that?
No, this has been around for a year.
Okay.
Essentially, when we started this process, we had lots of other changes that we were going to make in addition to the performance standards for the buffer zone.
Right, like we were changing the preamble. There was a lot of changes we've already discussed, right?
Well, that the preamble we don't have a change for, but we had all these little changes that you're looking at here that you've seen this document but a year ago.
Yeah,
And so when I broken it up, we broke it up into a lot of different changes, which this is part of them. There's all the different reg changes, lots of little things here or there, definitional things, and then there's the whole block on buffer zone performance standards, which is what we've been mainly looking at over the last number of months. So now I'm going back to all the non-buffer zone performance standard work. That was done in the past, predates some people and not others. And so there's a bunch of definitions. There's some performance, there's a little bit around performance standard. This is basically some nitty-gritty little stuff that you have to go read the regs and look at it. There's even stuff about talking about exempt activities, whether we wanted to qualify them more and how that overlapped with administrative approvals. And some of the language for administrative approval needed to be cleaned up. And then there's some submission issues about things here. So this is just a few, this is only 3 or 4 pages of some changes. I might come up with some additional ones. There's things, changes for fill. You have to look at our fees a little bit. But this is just something, at least a starter thing to move forward that we can hopefully go through at least this part at the next meeting. And there's a lot of simpler stuff, and then there's some things about definitions that we just need to think about.
okay, so Michael, these are a bunch of changes that you're suggesting, but that like in a bunch of different places. And the stuff we worked on with Matt was more focused on the 50 to 100, right?
Right. It
Yeah.
overlaps with the other, but right, that was all buffer zone performance standards.
Right.
Like, and this is part of thing, because there's also the whole issue of how we amend orders of conditions. That's another thing, whether we want to change that. So these things are a little more, hopefully a little more straightforward.
Yep.
And that's the bigger picture. And I think I did that in 4.5 minutes.
Good job.
Anybody else want to ask any questions about this, other than this is your homework?
Can you remind me, where are we with, with all the work that Matt did and the rewording and everything? Do we need to actually go through and take any additional votes on that? Or do we feel like
We'll
we've
have to take vote,
that
yeah.
agreement?
We will have to take votes on that. I was trying to get Matt to review it. I haven't bugged him because I was behind.
Do you want me to bug him for you?
No, I have to go work out the contractual thing with them. I think is something that that somehow they've let drop. So I will go pursue this contractual renewal thing, since it extended beyond that at the moment. But
Because I think that the hearing tonight is a great example of why obviously it'd be great to get a vote on it and get us into agreement on the regulations. Courtney's comment was very apt to, where are we now with regulations? So it would be great to go through and get that finalized.
right, and it's only going to be finalized as a draft, because then we have to publicize it more widely and get everybody there. So it is part of the first step. But I agree, we got to get that done. And there is still the draft in there that it was sent to Matt that people should be. Your other part of the homework is to read the other file that was in there, even though I sent it to Matt, just to see how you feel about that document. I have some issues around it, but that's still something for you to all see whether you feel comfortable. I know that there's some issues about whether one section needs to be included or not included, but I would say that in moving that forward, you should all read that other document and see how comfortable you feel. It's a little bit of a mix of different things, but it's my cut on what I think came out of all the different meetings. So that is also part B, I guess, of your homework to look at. And that's more substantive. Okay. Anything else for tonight? Okay. Let's see. So we're going to move this one to our typical 7:45. next time, and then we could always continue it till later in the night as needed.
Michael, did we, if there was the possibility of that first RDA not happening, do we want it to be earlier as a, just
How
in
about
case?
7:30? Because we could only do minutes and stuff. Okay, I'll take that. How about let's do 7:30? And go ahead. Okay, I move to continue this hearing on the drafting of regulatory changes to 7:30 on November 16th.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Okay, is there anything else that we missed on the agenda? Announcements, more, any site issues that we didn't cover yet?
No,
Okay. No more, we did the administrative rules. Okay. Gang, we've done it. One more night done, and I move to adjourn at 7:32.
Second.
9:33, whatever I was.
I think it's 9:33.
Yes, I think I had a time warp. Okay, did I get a second? Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I, Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
I don't know, Steve?
Aye.
And did I miss anybody who wants to vote twice? Okay, meeting adjourned.